Be the cutie booty. Who's the cutie booty? You tell everyone in the comments. Okay, bye.
Cue the Yeehaws, the Outlaws, and I don't know, something else that.
There's like 6 different archetypes.
And the good girl paws.
Oh, get the dogs out. But I'm Kyle.
I'm Tom.
And this is Gaslight Upkeep.
Baby!
So, we're talking about Outlaws of Thunder Junction today. See a lot of great cards in it, see a lot of terrible cards in it. This set is actually 2 sets put together. It was supposed to be kind of like how Mars of the Machines was and then Aftermath, but we all saw how Aftermath went. And I think they just put everything into one set. What about you, Tom?
I love the theme of Cowboys. I love the theme of Outlaws. This takes me right back to playing Red Dead Redemption. That's for damn sure. But as far as the cards that we are seeing here, I mean, I think some of them are absolutely phenomenal. I'm also seeing these box breaks happening. Lots of mythics that are coming out with it. I don't know. I think there's decent value in the cards, and I think they're going to be rising in price as the days are going to go further, as people start to play with these new mechanics, like the plot mechanic. We're going to be going through how those, different things work. I'm excited for this set. I really am.
All right. Well, we're going to hop right into our commanders. We're going to start out with mine. Mine's going to be Geared, Mirror of the Wilds. It's a 3/3 Naya. To come in, it's got haste. Non-token creatures you control have tapped. Create a token that's a copy of target token you control that entered the battlefield this turn. Now, any type of deck that has play, create a token that's a copy of a token, it gains haste until end of turn, then sacrifice it at end of turn, like Felden of the Third Path. Dino DNA I see in this as well, because you're going to be able to start making more tokens. You can imprint on maybe, let's say, Felden. You can do it on a couple of other creature cards out there. But what I love about it is the easy combo, Kiki Jiki and Helm of the Host. There we go. But when you play that and you have Helm of the Host attached to Kiki Jiki at the beginning of your combat phase, you can create a copy of it that's non-legendary. And then what you do is you can tap it, then start creating tokens. So you're going to start making infinite tapped creature tokens as well as infinite ETBs. So if they're not coming in tapped because they're the original one, you can start having a huge army. And that's how you're going to be able to win the game, kill the board as a whole. So that's why I like it a lot. Now, there's a couple of other cards that you could easily put in here, like Jaxus, the Troublemaker, Bramble, Sovereign, Ortheon, which is another type of creature that gives you that ability where you create a copy of it, of target creature, and then sacrifice it at the end of the turn. Finally, what I would throw in is the enchantment of Flame Shadow Conjuring, because whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay red. If you do create a token that's a copy of that creature, that token gains haste. Now, you're going to be able to do it 3 to 4x times every time you go into combat phase.
It's right there in the print, because like you've seen those cards where if you can copy the copy and then keep copying copies, you're already going to flood the board immediately. And if you pair this with like an Impact Tremors, where each creature that enters the battlefield, you're dealing 1 damage, and then also throw in a Goblin Bombardment, so that way when creatures are going to die at the end of the turn, you might as well have use when they die. So you can sacrifice and deal even more damage. So if you can get to that point where you're making infinite tokens, at that point, you're going to be winning the game.
Yeah. One of the combos that I used to have in Jetmir was Midnight Guard and Presence of Gone. And when that is attached to Midnight Guard, you can tap it to create a 1/1 elf, and then Midnight Guard's ability is that whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you get to untap it. Now you can actually just put it with Geared as well now, because now non-token creatures that you have become it.
Because it's a Naya, throw a Jetmir to end the game, having all those creatures out. A lot of different ways that you can build around it, but this is definitely one of those cards that can just be very broken real fast.
Worldly Tutor, Eladamari's Call, even Analyze the Pollen if you have the Evidence 8. Those are 3 tutors right there that will go and get Jetmir for you.
True. Or impact tremors or
Yeah.
goblin bombardment.
Impact Tremors will win you the game because with the infinite ETBs of Kiki Jiki or Midnight Guard, you're going to be able to just deal that much damage to everyone. That's going to be my commander today. And now we're going to go over to Tom's commander. I'm just going to edit that out as well.
And here we are with my commanders. So, as far as it goes, the favorite commanders that I see are the tiny ones. Tiny creatures, tiny life, tiny fun. Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket. It is a 1 swamp, legendary creature, skeleton rogue, and it has Death Touch. And whenever Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket, deals damage to target player, you may cast target non-land card from that player's graveyard and use any mana type to spend that cast that spell. So, cool thing about this is that you're still having those discard synergy with Tiny Bones because you want to put their permanents in their graveyard so you can cast it. Couple cards that are going to help fill those graveyards for your opponent: Mind Crank, Sword of Body and Mind, right? When you attack, deal damage, have target opponent mills 10 cards. That's huge. And then, mix in like a Sir Conrad the Grim to deal extra damage while also having that mill effect. And then for like the targeted cards that you want to like specifically pick out, maybe you're going against like some type of Timmy deck, right? And they have a Vorinclex. Go ahead and Thought Seize them, have it discard right into the graveyard, deal damage with Tiny Bones. And at that point, you'll be able to cast their Vorinclex. Pretty cool stuff. Has the stealing effects like Gonti, has discard synergies, has mill synergies. I mean, this is a fun card to play with. So, yeah, Tiny Bones. Hell yeah. What about you, Kyle? What do you think about it?
I don't play this. This isn't my style, but this is right up your alley, man. No, I just gonna be honest. I wouldn't know what to really do with it. I mean, obviously, like, I would be able to figure it out, but it's just not my type of fun. I don't really like milling other people and then taking their control. That doesn't.
It's the guy who has a Bruvac deck.
I literally made that deck for people like you. That's the only reason.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna go over to my fire faves next. No, you're not gonna stick your head behind Tom. She's like, but I can, and I should. It's time for our fire faves. Are you ready?
It's a stick up.
We are on to my fire faves.
So far, you had to drink a little bit of water.
That's how fire they are. We're going to start with Bristly Build, Spine Sower. It is 1 generic, 1 green. It is a 2/2 when it enters the battlefield. And it is awesome. It is both +1/+1 counters as well as landfall abilities. So you could easily just make this a commander. It's a plant druid. Its landfall ability is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Then for 3 generic and 2 green, you can double the number of 1/1 counters on each creature you control. Whether you wanted to put it in the 99 or as a commander, when I'm thinking of this card, if I'm going to put it in the 99, I'm thinking of Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider, because you're doubling the 1/1 counters anytime that you are distributing counters itself. I think it's actually more than just the 1/1s. Yeah, it's 1 or more counters on a permanent. So it's not just 1/1s, it's Planeswalker loyalty counters. It's Sage count or Saga counters. It's going to be anything that is increasing in counters, even in neg-1s. So Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider for sure. Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig. Court of Garenbrig is great. It turns more into like a Monarch style deck. I do like that there's Gargos, Vicious Watcher. It's a Hydra, so if you want to start making more towards the Hydra decks, because of the fact that its ability is Hydras cost 4 generic less to cast, and a lot of Hydras are X abilities. So that's what I'm thinking about with Bristly Bill. Me personally, I'm teetering around putting this in my Gave deck because it is a +1/+1 sapling deck, but it's hard for me to even think about which card I'm going to take out in order to put it in. Tom, what's your thoughts?
Card good.
Very good.
It's a good card.
Yeah.
You said it all.
Makes sense. So next one I have is Hell to Pay. It is X and then 1 red. It is a sorcery. Hell to Pay deals X damage to target creature. Create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the amount of excess damage dealt to that creature this way. My first thought is I'm putting this in my Rowan deck because of the fact that it is whenever I lose life, I now can utilize that, tap Rowan, and then spells cost X less to cast. So that sorcery is going to get really beefed up if I am utilizing Rowan the right way. You know, I could be losing 5 to 10 life in one sitting. You good? You all done? Thank you. But you could be losing 10 life in one turn utilizing Rowan properly. Tap her, now you're dealing 10 damage. You do it to a 1/1. Now you make 9 treasure tokens. If you have Revel and Riches out, you're more than likely going to have 1 extra treasure token, so that now is 10. And all you have to do is wait till your next upkeep and you win the game. So I love this card for that reason. Now, there's other decks that you could put this in. That's why I liked it. I think it would be fun in my Rowan deck. I'm definitely buying it for that.
The only thing that kind of kills me on that card is just, one, it's creating tap treasure tokens. So they come into tap, you can't use them right away. That blows. The thing that also kills me is that it only is dealing damage to target creature versus any target. So it's limiting in that effect. Still though, I mean, it does have a lot of, wiggle room, just the fact that it does prep you for the next turn. But I don't know. I guess you would have to see how it plays.
That's going to be my second one. My third one is going to be Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. It is 1 and then Grixis. It is an Ogre Warlock. It has Menace. It's a 2/5. Whenever Obeka, Splitter of Seconds, deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. This honestly could have been my second commander, because it's got the upkeep steps after this phase, and I can think of at least 4 or 5 cards that I'm automatically putting in this deck. Descent into Inverness. It's at the beginning of your upkeep. Put 2 descent counters on Descent into Avernus. Then each player creates X treasure tokens, and Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of descent counters on. If you can make Obeka deal, let's say you beef her up, you have an instant or sorcery that can beef it up because there's no blockers on the board for one of your opponents, and now you can deal 4 to 5 damage. Now you're doing 4 to 5 additional upkeeps, and what that's going to do is put 10 counters on Descent into Avernus, and when you're utilizing that, 10 counters equals 10 damage to each opponent. So now you're just dealing a lot of excess damage to them. Now you're making yourself a huge enemy. Then, as well as that Darksteel Reactor, it also has an upkeep ability of you may put a charge counter on it. When Darksteel Reactor has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. Just think of this as like a Revel in Riches for treasure tokens, except this is going to be charge counters. You're going to be wanting to get 4 to 5, maybe even 6 upkeeps, because you're going to be able to do that. And then finally, a Mechanized Production is going to be the final card that I would really want to talk about with this, because it has at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of Enchanted Artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts of the same name as one another, you win the game. So that's treasure tokens as well, because they're artifacts.
Yeah. No, this card has just too many upside to it. Very little downside. It has the evasion. It's 2/5 for 4 mana. Getting extra upkeeps is insane, and I've seen it get broken. And shoot, if you throw Roaming Throne in here, you're doubling those. you're doubling the upkeep amount or upkeep phases. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of disgusting things that you can do with just that mechanic itself. And there's a lot of cards: Phyrexian Arena, Black Market Connections. It's disgusting.
That's why it's in my fire faves. Next up, we have Archangel of Tides. It's an angel. It's 1 and then 3 planes. It's 3/5 flying. As long as Archangel of Tides is untapped, creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. As long as Archangel of Tides is attacking, creatures can't block unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. Now, this is an even better stacks card in my eyes, than Ghostly Prison, because now you have the feature of both attacking and staying dormant as well.
Yeah. It does kind of force you to stay within the mono white scheme because it has 3 pips for the white color.
No.
But a 3/5 for 4 mana that's flying, that's already solid. And just having that stacks ability on it just makes it even better.
I would be putting this potentially in my Loro deck just to slow people down and have more creatures in it just for blockers.
I hope you don't get the mana for it though.
Chromatic Lantern. We'll get the mana for it.
Ooh.
But those are going to be mine. My fire fave. Oh, wait, nope. I forgot we did more fire faves than normal because we're doing less Slayer Nays. Next up is going to be another white card. It is Aven Interrupter. It is 1 generic and then 2 white mana or planes. It's a bird rogue. It's 2/2. It's got flash and it's got flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell. It becomes plotted. Spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 generic more to cast. I'm automatically thinking someone's trying to Teferi's protect themselves with a board wipe, with something that's gonna kill them. Now I'm gonna throw in Aven Interrupter right onto the field, exile that, and now it costs 2 more. So now it'll cost them 5 to use it again. But if they're using Teferi protection, it's normally because they're about to lose the game. That's when you're gonna see that most. Any thoughts on Aven Interrupter?
It's a counter card white on a creature. What? That's crazy. Yeah, that's good interaction. It's too many plus sides to it. It's also flying and flash. Like, you could have just took out the flying part and just the fact that it's like a 2/2 and made it a 1/1. I'd still use it. Or not. You can literally just not even make it a creature, just make it a spell, and I'd still use it. Like, not only did you make a counter card, you're like, yeah, let's give it 2/2 flying as well. Like, what?
Let's make it block basically everything possible.
Oh yeah, we'll also make it stacks too.
Yeah.
Stupid.
That's why it's on my fire faves. After that one, it's going to be Railway Brawler. Now, this card goes really well in Bristly Bill, so I like that a lot. I feel like green in this set is very centered around the +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, and really focused on with creatures too. Less on like the planeswalkers or any type of other counters.
Yeah, so but it has Reach Trample. It's a 3 generic and 2 forests. It's a 5/5. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put X/1/1 counters on it, where X is its power. But instead of paying 5, you can plot it for 4. And then you can play it next turn for free. The commanders that I would use this in are more in a +1/+1 deck like Bristly Bill, Vorinclex, but I want to put this in my Gave deck too, potentially, because if I'm making a bunch of saplings, now they're going to get +1/+1 on it, and then I can keep beefing those up. This could almost be like my Feladar's Retreat, but in creature form. What are your thoughts?
Cool thing about this card, it works really well with Rocco Street Chef, because now you get to use the plot ability. In Rocco, you want to be playing cards from your exile. So if you're playing plot with Rocco, now you're going to get additional +1/+1 counters with Rocco, and you also just get the food token as well. I think the cool thing about plot is that it really does create explosive turns, and usually in Commander, you usually typically are going to set up for the next turn. At least you're always setting up for the next turn for the first 5 turns, right? And then by that point, that's when you want to start getting your win cons out. Having Railway Brawler have that plot 4 really makes that next turn just stupid explosive. One other thing to mention that is a very key word to this is the Reach and Trample. I've seen both those mechanics together, where 1, you have the ability to just defend against any of those flyers, but 2, having that trample ability really gets in that damage, especially if you're going up against like aristocrat deck and they just have all those 1/1 creatures that are gumming up the board. Now you'll be able to get that damage through. You have +1/+1 counters everywhere. I can see like turn 1 playing a Mystic Elf or whatever. Going from there, turn 2, you're going to probably play another ramp card. And then by that time, either you're going to play Railway Brawler for the 5 mana cost, or better yet, just pay for the plot cost, maybe have one interaction spell with 1 mana open. Come by the next turn, you're going to be able to cast that card for free and get another creature out for free, and have much more of an explosive turn that following turn. Yeah, I mean it's there's no downside to this.
Yep. Absolutely, but that's why it's another one of my fire faves. Then we're going to go over to red. It's going to be Great Train Heist. It's a spree card. I like it a lot because it gives you that additional combat phase. We were just talking about Ansrag in, or is it Carwell Manor? There's plenty of other cards out there. That's its +2/+1 red. Untap all creatures you control. If it's your combat phase, there's an additional one after this. And it's an instant on top of it. Then if you want to go to the secondary one and +2 it on top of that, or just choose this one in general, creatures you control gain +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. And then its extra one, which is just plus red. Choose target opponent. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to that player this turn, create a tapped treasure token. You can put this in your treasure deck. You can put this in additional combat phases deck. And I mean, the secondary one where it's giving +1/+0 and first strike, I think it would be good if you have a bunch of tokens, creature tokens out, and somebody else does. But I wouldn't use that much. What are your thoughts?
You'd be surprised. Having that at instant speed tends to be really good. Catch people out of nowhere where they don't block you because all of a sudden, they just think it's just a bunch of 1/1s attacking you, but then you give all those 1/1s an extra +1, damage or +1 power, then all of a sudden you're actually dying. It's like some of those little things that are sneaky. I think the value that comes with this card is just that it works really well in the early game, but also can be devastating in the late game. So it has, flexibility. It's a versatile card.
My final one for my fire faves is going to be Gold Vein Hydra. It is X generic and 1 green. It is a Hydra. It's a 0/0. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. And when it enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters, and then when it dies, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to that power. They are just beefing up treasure decks and wanting more treasures to be involved in this. Revel in Riches is going to skyrocket in price. I could just see that already with this, because this is awesome. Again, it kind of goes back to that Gargos Vicious Watcher that I was talking about before. That Hydra costs 4 less if you have this Hydra in. Let's say I only have 5 mana. It's only going to be 4/4. Now it's going to be an 8/8 because of that. And that's what I liked about it a lot. The treasure tokens were fun. What are your thoughts? Same?
The one thing that always gets me, and I guess Wizards caught on to how strong treasures really were, is that they're making them come in tapped. And that just basically makes the deck so much slower. Because half the time when you're making those treasure tokens, you really want to make those treasure tokens come in untapped so that way you can cast more spells. But when they have it come in tap, it just prevents you from popping off the way you really want to. So that's the only thing that kills me. But Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, I mean, the card can be a win con right then and there without any, heads up on this card coming down. All of a sudden, you're in late in turns, you have nothing on the battlefield besides a crap ton of lands and mana. Shoot, I mean, this might be the card that you need where just dump all that mana into it. Now it's a 10/10 beefy boy with Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Go ahead and swing that last few damage that's needed. And then if it dies, well, guess what? You're just getting a bunch of treasure next turn. But that's it.
That's going to be my fire fave.
Alrighty, so now we're going to be going into my fire phase, and it is quite fire to say the least. So just starting off, we're going to go with Lotus Rings, 3 mana, as an artifact equipment, and it has Indestructible. Quick creatures are going to get +3/+3, has Vigilance, and sacrifice this creature, add 3 mana, any one color. As far as how I'm seeing this, it has the equipment synergies. It also has the sacrifice synergies. So you're going to be seeing a lot of the red, white, black color schemes, right? If you could have those cards that are going to be reducing its equip cost to 0. Brunor, Fervent Champion, Forge Anew. Those are going to be the big ones, basically, in order to reduce that equipment cost, because, paying 3 extra mana to equipment is quite heavy. And then, having to pay 3 mana to also get onto the battlefield is quite heavy. You don't really want to be paying that extra 3 mana. But if you can create those infinite combos where you can, sacrifice that creature, bring it back to the battlefield for cheap costs, and then already be able to equip it, equip the Lotus Ring to it for free, have a Pitiless Plunderer out on the battlefield as well, you're going to be able to, create that infinite mana synergy combo just by sacrificing your creatures in a sense. Throw in a Mayhem Devil with it, so that way you're dealing extra damage. A Skull Clamp with it, so that way you're also drawing cards while sacrificing. And then, it just pops off out of nowhere. It really has brought a whole new level of gameplay with the equipment decks that were really lacking a lot of the mana synergies that were needed in order for those decks to really pop off. What are your thoughts on this card, Kyle?
It gives mana now to Boros players, and if you have Skull Clamp on the creature as well when you're sacrificing it, now you're drawing 2 cards on top of it, so you'd be easily creating a draw engine and mana engine for your other spells. Like I was saying, I would go in Boros for the most part with this card. I feel like that's going to get the most value out of it because of the lack of draw and mana abilities, ramp abilities that it has, because like I was telling you before, Fighter's Class as well as Astor Bearer of, I can't remember the last word, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's obviously going to be right next to me. It's going to reduce the cost to equip to 1 generic instead of whatever its equip cost is. My commander that my first Voltron deck was Brunor Battlehammer. This is going to be great in it as well because I can now equip it for free onto it. I feel like I would almost want to create some type of token synergy though with this in the equip. Like I feel like I would have to have a token generating equipment deck to really see the ultimate form of this, because the fact that you're going to be doing aristocratic style because you're going to want to obviously sacrifice to gain more mana, as well as potentially other abilities for whenever a creature dies, Zoop or Cutthroat. You can go in with the Orzhov, like you were saying, just to kind of go back into those colors. So there's a lot of capabilities with it. I think it's a little overhyped, just because it has the word Lotus in it. I feel like a lot of people are just overhyping it for that fact, because it does get +3/+3 and has vigilance, but now you have to sacrifice it. And if you don't have constant token generation or something to constantly be putting more creatures on the field to sacrifice it, to use it for its mana ability, I don't really see it being too much. It'd be hard for like Power 9 decks to pull something out, or Power 10 and put this in.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of upside to it.
Absolutely.
That is needed for red, white, and then with the black.
Definitely.
I mean, Mardu. Run this with not Awaken the Blood God, but the Extus, Ortic, and Awake. I think is it Awaken the Blood God? I think it is Awaken the Blood God. Yeah, basically where you can sacrifice X amount of creatures, cast that sorcery for X amount of less, in that type of synergy where you're always sacrificing creatures, sacrificing permanents, that's going to be big. Lotus Ring, pretty solid card, pretty pricey though.
Yeah, put it in Dogmeat, which just came out in Fallout as well.
Dogmeat would be good too, yeah.
What do we got next?
I'm a fan of the frog horror, the Gitrog, Ravenous Ride. 3 mana Golgari, legendary creature frog, horror mount. Trample haste. Whenever Gitrog, Ravenous Ride deals combat damage to a player, I may sacrifice a creature that saddled it this turn. And if I do, I get to draw X cards, then put X land cards from my hand onto the battlefield tab, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. We're looking at Golgari, big, stompy, I like my creatures to die effects. And in order to have this type of deck pop off, you're looking at making your creatures big. And there's a couple Golgari creatures that are going to be huge in this. I mean, just imagine having Yargle with this deck. The 18-6, the new one, Golgari. I mean, you're going to be able to draw 18 cards if you get to sacrifice Yargle, and then be able to put any lands on the battlefield that you ended up, getting from that draw. Daemogoth, Titan, Galta, Primal Hunger. It's big stompy creatures, but now you have the effects of sacrificing them, bringing them back to the battlefield, throwing Breach the Multiverse. That way you can get those big cards. And then, any other way that you can possibly cheat out any of the big creatures with reanimation. So, a lot of good synergies. The fact that it has that draw effect on it is huge.
I would honestly just take apart Zeatora and just throw most of the cards that are in that deck into this. Just take the Golari out of that and put it into this deck, because I would just be putting big stompy things to then sacrifice and then deal damage, draw cards.
You also just put Gitrog, or the Gitrog in the
you're obviously
deck.
Gonna put
Stupid. Anyways, next card that we are seeing for my fire faves is Ariet the Beguiler. It is a Esper, one generic legendary creature, human warlock, lifelink. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that aura's mana value, gain control of that target permanent for as long as the aura is attached to it. This is kind of cool. It's now, not only did we have Ariet from Wilds of Eldraine, right? Now we're having Ariet with, having the ability to gain control of other cards. And the fact that we are now seeing the blue color be a part of Ariet, it gives us so much more access to more enchantment auras that we didn't have in the Orzhov version of the deck.
The newest cards that I did like out of it was Nerd Rage. That's in the Fallout set, because when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw 2 cards. Then if you have 10 or more cards, on top of it, including now you have no maximum hand size, you can now add +10/+10 until end of turn on that creature. So if you're actually using Ariet the Beguiler, and you put this onto someone else's creature, you now gain control of them. And then when you have 10 or more cards in your hand, you're getting +10/+10 on that.
Yeah, and you can also throw in Zur the Enchanter in here as well to help you with finding those enchantments. And, having Archon Sungrace out as well to, pump out more creatures and Pegasus, being able to pop off with the constellation effects. Let's not also forget about Alayla, the Provocateur, being able to, get 1/1 blue fairies with enchantments coming into the battlefield. There is so many synergies that you can have with this deck, but I think the other cool thing about this is that it really turns on those big auras, because now your big auras that, really didn't do much except buff your creatures a lot, but it might cost 8 mana to do it. Now you can put it on your opponent's creatures and taking control of them. So now you're stealing the cards, you're buffing them up, and possibly swinging for big damage. That's not fun.
That's a fire fave. That equates to a fire fave indeed.
Yeah. Going from there, we have Oko, the Ringleader. With Oko, the Ringleader, it is a Simic 2 mana. At the beginning of combat of your turn, Oko, the Ringleader, becomes target or a copy of target creature you control until end of turn, except he has hexproof. And then for the +1 ability, it comes out with 3 loyalty counters. For the +1 ability, you get to draw 2 cards, and if you committed a crime, you can discard a card. As far as committing crimes go, I'm all for it. And what it means is basically you're targeting your opponent's stuff, whether it's an ability or if it's, a spell that you're casting. So with, that being said, Planeswalkers, those are abilities, and if you're targeting certain, things on your opponent's side, guess what? Now you're going to be able to, get that extra effect, being able to only discard 1 card versus 2 cards. So that's how committing crimes is going to be really good, especially in this Planeswalker synergy type style that I see. -1, you're just going to be making that 3/3 green elk creature token. And then the -5 for each other non-land permanent that you're going to control, you're going to create a token that's a copy of that permanent. Really cool stuff. Probably the best thing that I do see here is with that Planeswalker synergy. Maybe having a Troxa out, going with the Oko Ringleader, you're having multiple Planeswalkers. You're going to easily be able to commit crimes by having Planeswalkers targeting your opponent's stuff with their abilities. From there, if you can, possibly create tokens of those non-land permanents being Planeswalkers, you're going to really make this deck pop off. How about you, Kyle? Any way that you see yourself also playing this? Is this something that you throw in your Commander or your Super Friends deck?
No.
Okay.
That's all I got. This one's all you, bud.
Thanks for your input.
You're
Sorry I asked.
It's just, the committing crimes is just, it's not my play style, so...
It is your play style.
I'm not targeting a lot of things. I mean, in specific decks, yes, but I'm more of just a creature type.
Says the guy who has a Rowan deck.
Yeah, it's one deck.
Says the guy who has an Oloro deck.
That's 2 decks out of 13.
Says the guy who's running Gave.
Gave's not blue.
Oh, whatever. You're targeting your opponent's stuff. You're committing crimes. You didn't even know it.
The Loro.
We're evading taxes.
Well, I mean, the name of Loro.
Hello, IRS. Do not check my taxes.
The title of my deck, Loro, is Crony Capitalism for a reason.
Yeah. Taxes and staxes.
Oh, yeah. What do you got as your last one?
The Sword of Wealth and Power. 3 mana, artifact equipment, equipped creature gets +2/+2 and protection from instants and sorceries. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. That's good. And it can also fit in, a couple different decks, but I mean, the obvious one is having a Storm Spellslinger deck. Throw this in the Izzet deck. Now your creature that is going to be swinging for damage, like maybe Brawl and Kari Zev, right? Now you'll be able to copy your instant sorceries, and then, from those copies, be able to do more things. every Spellslinger, when we're talking about Brawl, Kari Zev, Niv Mizzet.
I'm thinking of Ziatora and Marika as well. Ziatora is all about gaining control of other people's creatures so that you can then sacrifice them.
So what? Now you just gain control of 2 creatures?
Yeah.
That's Commander. There's going to be a lot of creatures. But yeah, I mean, pair this up with like a Storm Kiln Artist. That way you're getting treasures for each of those copy effects as well. Like the Magecraft effects are really good with this. This Sword of Wealth and Power, and it fits into a lot of different decks. I mean, it itself can also just be part of, Voltron decks, right? Yeah, now your Voltron decks, all those instant sorceries you have in that, because, there's going to be a few. You're going to be copying them.
Yeah. This is a really good card.
It is very good.
Awesome, and that's going to be the end of your Fire Faves, right, Tom?
Right.
Awesome. So next, we're going to go over to Slayer Nay. All right. We are on the Slayer Nay portion. Right, Tom?
Hey.
Well, it's gonna be a Slayer Nay for sure. Took you an extra 20 minutes to figure out all these extra cards that you didn't know about before. This guy right here. I want to talk less about the cards in Slayer Nay. And it's 12 cards.
Some good cards.
We're gonna start off with Memory Vessel. All right. We are on the Slayer Nay portion. Right, Tom?
Hey.
Well, it's gonna be a Slayer Nay for sure. Took you an extra 20 minutes to figure out all these extra cards that you didn't know about before. This guy right here. I want to talk less about the cards in Slayer Nay. And it's 12 cards.
Some good cards.
We're going to start off with Memory Vessel, though. 3 generic, 2 red. It is an artifact. Tap it, exile Memory Vessel. Each player exiles the top 7 cards of their library until your next turn. Players may play cards they exiled this way, and they can't play cards from their hand. Activate only as a sorcery. I like this a lot because if you're playing cards from exile, first card that really comes to mind is going to be Faldorn Dreadwolf Herald. It is a human druid, and then whenever you cast a card or a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf. Then you can tap one generic and tap it, discard a card, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn.
Yeah.
So that's just going to be an engine for it, as well as just high synergy for that. Pia Noir is another one, and Quintorius Khan. So that's why I like it a lot. That's why I think it is a slay. What about you?
Yeah, play Dranith Magistrate with this. You're evil.
It's a slay.
But yeah, really good stuff. Next off, we have Slick Shot Show Off. It's a 1 generic, 1 red creature bird wizard. Has flying haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Slick Shot Show Off gets +2/0 until end of turn. Also has the plot for the generic and the red, and it's a 1/2. Here's the thing that I like about this card is that it's flying, it's haste, it's 2 mana. With that ability, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Slick Shot Show Off gets +2. If you're playing this in a storm type synergy deck, you can get this card to like 12 power and then swing with that. And not only that, it's flying in haste. So you're going to be evading blockers, you're going to sneak in that damage, and it's only 2 mana. Very high value, very low risk.
No, it's a pretty good card. It's good for those storm decks, like you said. So slay for storm.
Yay.
All right, next one is going to be Lost Jit. It is an artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, to put a charge counter on Lost Jit. It also costs only 1 mana, and its equip cost is 1, so it's a low cost. But whenever you remove a charge counter from Lost Jit, you get to choose one. Untap target land, target creature can't block this turn, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature. I think it's a very versatile equipment for a low cost as well. You can easily replace this with any other of the 1 mana ones that you're just putting on, as far as just getting as many equipments on. I know I would love this in my Brunor deck because it is such a low cost equipment to put on, and with Brunor it gets +2, +0, and it's going to be able to game these charge counters fast if I'm able to hit. What are your thoughts?
Throw this with proliferate decks, Troxa, anything that's going to increase those charge counters, and then with those counters, I mean, you can do a lot. Just untapping target lands is huge. It's probably the big one that I'd be using this card mainly for. And 1 mana, that's pretty good.
Exactly. So slay it is.
Yeah, it's a slag. For our next card is going to be Jace. Excuse me, not Jace. It's going to be 3 steps ahead. It's 1 blue spree, or instant. It has the spree. Choose 1 or more additional costs. So you can either add the 2 extra mana, counter the spell, add 3 mana, create a target token or copy of an artifact or creature you control, and then the +2, so now it's 3 mana, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. At first I was like, this card was not that great, but I think the real value in it is that it's a modal instant. So if there's no spells to counter, you can then just draw or possibly make a token that's a copy of a target artifact or creature you control. It's good.
Yeah, great. It's a very versatile utility card for sure, with the draw ability, the counter ability. So that's why I say it's a slay. It's going to be a little tough to get all 3 of them out with the amount of mana, especially if you're playing in a mono blue deck, but slay overall.
Yeah.
Follow-upping with that with Geralf, the Fleshwright. Human Warlock, 2/3, costs 2 generic, 1 blue. It has, whenever you cast a spell during your turn other than your first spell that turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. Then, whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it for each other zombie that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. I'm instantly thinking of a storm deck that you're going to put this in, because of the fact that with the amount of instants and sorceries you can play, you're creating that many zombies now and putting that many +1/+1 counters on it. I had originally said, why not put Gisa and Geralf as the commander and put Gisa the Hellraiser and Geralf the Fleshwright into that deck in the 99, or both of them into the 99. It's a very easy, versatile combination in my eyes. And again, I know I'm saying the same thing for versatile, but that's the reason why I've decided any of these cards for Slayer Nay, because they're well-rounded and they're very useful. This one only costs 3 mana to put onto the field. What's your thoughts?
When I see Geralt the Fleshlight, basically the cool thing about this card is that you're going to want to put it in a zombie tribal. Within the zombie tribal, there are ways where you can just infinitely cast a card by bringing it back from the battlefield. Actually, no, I don't think that counts as it. Now I'm thinking about it. It would have to say casting, and that's just returning target creatures to the battlefield. So, yeah, no, I'm just rambling on at this point. One cool thing I will say is, like, let's say you pair Geralt with, let's go with Bolas Citadel. You'll be able to just cast a crap ton of cards from the top of your library by using the, life as your mana cost instead. And, sometimes I've seen in some blue-black decks where it's going to be multiple cards cast after that first one. And so if you can get more of those triggers off, you're going to make more zombies. And for each zombie that's entering the battlefield, you're going to get huge. So this could be a really solid game ender for sure.
So Slay.
Yeah, I give it a Slay.
Perfect. What do we got next?
Step Between Worlds, 3 and 2 blue sorcery. Each player may shuffle their hand and graveyard into their library. Each player who does draws 7 cards and exile Step Between Worlds. And it has the plot for 6 mana.
I like it. I would plot it. And then, this is for when you're in a jam and you need that. I liked it because it was very similar to, I get it, Midnight Clock is an artifact that also gives you blue mana, but this is more instantaneous than having to wait potentially 5 turns in order to get it.
Yeah, but I think it sucks because it has the each player may. So it's not, you can't force other players to shuffle their hand and get a new hand. And for you to do this, yes, it is a 5 mana draw 7. It gets exiled immediately, but the thing is that it helps your opponents if they are able to just, if they have no cards in their hand, they can just say, yeah, I would like to shuffle my hand into the graveyard, or shuffle my hand and graveyard into my library and draw 7.
Okay.
And it just, it gives your opponents too much value as well. That's what kills me. So I'm going to give it a nay.
I'm going to still give it a Slay just because of you being able to draw 7 new cards if you're all drawn out. What do we got next?
Jace Reawaken, 2 blue, legendary planeswalker. Comes in with 3 loyalty counters, and you can't cast spells during your first or second or third turn of the game when it's out. With the +1 ability, you get to draw cards and discard a card. And then with the other +1 ability, you may exile a non-land card with mana value less, 3 or less from your hand, and if you do, it becomes plotted. And then from there, until end of turn, whenever you cast a spell, copy it, and you may choose new targets for the spell for the -6 ability. Here's the cool thing about it. Get this out turn 2, and then that's your second turn. So by turn 3, you still won't be able to, cast any spells. But getting this out on turn 2, you're getting the elude ability, and you're also setting up your next turns by being able to plot, mana value or 3 mana value cards or less. So it's I see this being too good. Planeswalker, just 2 mana. Wow.
Yeah. It's very good if you're going to use plot.
It is good if you're going to use plot, but I mean, it also doesn't even matter because usually by the time you're hitting your 4th turn, I mean, this thing's still probably going to be on the battlefield. And you already have looted probably once or twice at that point. Yeah.
You can't cast this spell during your first, second, or third turn of the game.
Oh, you can't cast this spell.
Yeah, so
whatever. You can plot it. I still like it.
I'm gonna go nay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we got Double Down next. It's an enchantment, costs 3 generic and a blue. Whenever you cast an outlaw spell, copy that spell. So that means whenever an assassin, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws, they are already. Copies of permanent spells become tokens. So you like this a lot because of the crimes, and the outlaws that you're going to be putting in this. So I'm going to let you continue on this one because I wouldn't use this card ever.
It's not the crimes, it's just the fact that you're going to be copying, those creature types. So if you're running a deck that's like, one, this is much more affordable than, going with, there's another card. Basically, choose a creature type. As it enters the battlefield, copy that spell. It's in blue, but it's 5 mana cost. But, having Double Down instead, pair this with Roaming Throne. Maybe you're playing an Assassin's deck with the new Etrata that came out in Murders of Karlov. That deck's really good. And then you have Double Down copying your Assassins. Yeah, I mean, you're going to need it because a lot of the cards that you don't... There's not that many Assassins, and being able to copy them is going to be big. Pirates as well. Being able to copy your pirate spells is stupid.
Dockside.
Yep. Copy that, right? It's silly how this is a 4 mana cost, and you're going to have that Miram of the Sentinel ability, but with assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, warlocks. Lots of good stuff there.
That's a slay.
I give it a slay.
All right, we got Smuggler's Surprise up next. It's 1 green. It is an instant. It's got the Spree ability. It's +2 generic. Is mill 4 cards. You may put up to 2 creature and or land cards from among them, the milled cards, into your hand. So now you got ramp and or creatures. Then you can do the +4 generic and a green. You may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then you have the final one, which is +1 generic. Creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This card is so good because green is my centric color that I have in almost all of my decks. I have like 3 decks that don't have green, or 4 at the most out of 13. So to be able to get ramp with the +2, be able to put 2 creatures on 4 + 5, so 6 mana in total towards the late game. Maybe I'm getting mana screwed and I have only 6 mana and I have some bigger boys that I'm trying to get out. Now I can put both of them out. And then creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn for +1. So it's a heroic intervention as well. I love this card. It is absolutely being bought by me. Your thoughts?
It's a slay.
Yeah, absolute slay. I don't think that could be explained any better in that sense. What do we got next?
So here we have the Key to the Vault. It is a 2 mana legendary artifact equipment. When equipped creature deals combat damage to that player, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them and put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. Oh, I love that. I love that sentence. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Wow. If you just happen to run a Voltron big mana stuff, this is it. That's cool. Cast your Omniscience for free. Wow. Only drawbacks is that you do have to have 5 mana dumped into this, so you're going to want to consider, putting this in a Voltron deck that has that ability to get this thing attached to the creature and then deal the damage, because that's going to make the deck itself. So the Leia, that was a really good one that I know our buddy Peter runs, that has the blue artifacts that are in there, so this would be a good card to really throw in there. But yeah, that's my thought. I give it a slay.
Slay it is. We've got Rush of Dread next. 1 generic, 2 black, sorcery. Not an instant. It's got the Spree ability though. It's +1 generic. His target opponent sacrifices half the creatures they own. Round it up. +2 generic. Target opponent discards half the cards in their hand. Round it up. +2 on top of that, as the last one is target opponent loses half their life. Round it up. Now, my first thought is Bloodletter of Aclazotz is on the field. I'm now paying 5 mana, so the 1 generic, 2 black to cast it, plus the 2 generic to make target opponent lose half their life, rounded up. I just killed them, because Bloodletter Aclazotz is all about doubling the amount of life drain that is going on, or how much they lose their life. That's why I think this is a slay. I would put this in my Rowan deck. I would put this in my Oloro deck. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's 4 mana. Just making opponents sacrifice half their creatures can be really big, especially if they're going crazy with filling up the board. And then having just the ability to possibly make target opponent lose half their life rounded up for just the 5 mana. I mean, that could be very huge. There's a lot of decent synergies in here that are really solid. The only thing that kills me is that it's just target opponent. It's not specifically each opponent within the commander pod itself. So if you're going to use this card, it's going to be the villain of that group that you're going to want to go after. That is pretty much way ahead, and you can knock them down just like a full peg, right? So I would give it a slay in some situations, but I think overall I'm going to give it the nay.
All right, what's next? I'm going to say slay still.
It's fair. Insatiable Avarice. It's a swamp sorcery spree. +2, search your library for a card, then shuffle and put that card on top. And then +2 swamp, or plus a swamp. Target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. I'm just going to say slay. It's simple. It's a tutor. It's draw cards.
Exactly. Slay.
Yep.
We've got Gisa the Hellraiser up next. 3 generic, 2 black. Kind of what we were talking about with Geralf. You want to put these two together because it's all about the zombie tribal with these guys and girls. So ward 2, pay 2 life. So you're going to be protecting that easily. If I have to ward, if I have to do it twice. Can you use it multiple times if it's pay life?
What are you talking about?
So oh, the opponent, never mind. But the ward 2 is pay 2 life, so not that hard to get rid of. Definitely easier than if it's a mana ability.
It's still hard to get rid of because you still have to pay 2 mana and then pay 2 life.
Oh, okay. So it's okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. Then whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability only triggers once each turn. Now, I would want to make this to where I'm in a control style deck where I'm playing a spell to target an opponent each and every turn so that I can make at least 1 per turn. So by the time I'm back around, I've got 4. And if I have Geralf out, he's getting +1 counters every time that's happening. What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, you can pair this with Geralf, have this also in the new Marchesa where you're committing crimes as well. I think the cool thing about this card itself is that it's going to let you gum up the board. It makes good use of your Planeswalker abilities if they are targeting opponents, targeting creatures, targeting graveyards, right? There's just a lot of versatility, which is the fact that you can play, something or have an ability to trigger, target your opponent's stuff. You're still creating a 2/2 blue-black zombie. Granted, it's tapped, but I do see this being a solid card. Now if I was playing like a CDH format where I'm looking at power 8 plus decks,
No.
I wouldn't put it in there. But
If you're playing casual.
I really do like this card. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a nay right now, even though there's part of me that wants to give it a slay.
All right. We don't have to agree on them all. What do we got next?
We have Final Showdown. It is a white instant spree +1. All creature loses abilities until end of turn. +1. Choose creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn. And then for the plus 3 and 2 white, destroy all creatures. Yeah, I don't know. I personally want to give it a nay.
I love the +1 ability where it's all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn.
It can definitely screw over somebody.
Yeah, like when somebody has indestructible and I have no board state and I get to destroy all creatures by removing all abilities.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
It actually negates a heroic intervention because it's an instant, it can go on top of it.
Yeah, it does.
That's why I give it a slay.
Alright.
Alright. Next up, we've got Marchesa, Dealer of Death. It is a human rogue. It is Grixis, 3/4. Whenever you commit a crime, you may pay 1. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So, as far as a crime-centric deck, this is going to be great. Tom, I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because I know you liked it a lot more than I did, though.
You may pay 1. Whenever you commit a crime, you may pay 1. If you do, you already read it?
Yeah.
Cool. So basically, the cool thing about this is that you're committing crime, so it pairs up really well with Gisa and Geralt because you're going to be targeting your opponent's stuff, possibly using instant sorceries, and then you get to pay the extra 1 to have that loot effect. It's going to fill your graveyard. It's also going to put a card in your hand, so now you have the ability to consider, having instant sorceries Grixis deck that has extra value with it, with creatures that can pop creatures out more now, and then also possibly play reanimation type stuff where it's targeting your opponent's graveyard. So like reanimate, right? It's not just your own graveyard, you can target opponent's graveyard, so you get to commit the crime, put creature from target opponent's graveyard to your battlefield, and then if you have Gisa and Geralt out, you're going to be making zombies at the same time. So it's a lot of plus side. Paying the extra mana to have that effect happen is good, and there's no limit to it. So if you're able to get that infinite mana and be able to just target a lot of your opponent's stuff, you're going to be able to loot through your deck and make it a lot easier to pop off. Yeah.
So slay for you?
I'll give it a slay. Yeah.
I'm going to say nay. We've got Assimilation Aegis next. It is 1 and then Azorius. Artifact equipment. Its equip cost is 2. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature card until this equipment leaves the battlefield. Whenever Assimilation Aegis becomes attached to a creature, for as long as it remains attached to it, that creature becomes a copy of a creature card exiled with this card. So what I'm going to do is I'm waiting till the later game. I'm waiting for somebody to put something big and scary out there, and then when it comes around to my turn, I am playing it and I'm exiling that, and now it becomes mine as soon as I equip it to a creature. That's what I think is really good because you're taking control of it. You're going to put this in it's not an aura, but still, I would contemplate putting this in the area at the Beguiler deck, just because it is taking control of another creature as well. It's still keeping the theme of it. What are your thoughts?
It's just really good. I mean, you're removing a creature with an artifact. Once again, these artifacts are just insane with the equipments, and they've really upped the ante with that. Just the fact that you can also have it, whatever you exile, then you can pretty much have one of your creatures become a copy of it. That's disgusting.
Like, I'm thinking Jin Kataxis, first card that I would want this to take over if somebody has out. I'm just thinking biggest, baddest creature out there. One of them like high mana cost as well. You got anything of that stature, even if you're playing against the Timmy deck and they have a big stompy boy or maybe a shouldered out because of Shoulder of the Apocalypse, you're taking that. Now you have that ability yourself. So absolute slay.
It's disgusting slay.
All right, what's next, Tom?
Cactus Folk Sure Shot. 2 generic Gruul creature plant mercenary. It's reach ward 2, and at the beginning of your combat of your turn, other creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain trample and haste until end of turn. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a nay. Don't really care for this card. I think it's pretty great with, all the upside, reach, ward 2. The only thing that I just don't really care about is that, it's all your 4+ creatures are getting trample and haste until end of turn. I mean, I just rather would put the Garrick, the Uprising card, because you're getting at least your creatures get trampled, but 2, now you get to draw. Most of the stuff that you're going to already be playing is for going to have trample in it if they're already that high of a mana cost. I don't know. I mean, throw this in, I guess, like a Gishath deck, then it makes sense. But I mean, most of those cards in Gishath are already trample.
Well, you're either putting in Gishath, you're putting this in Plant Tribal, you're putting this in big stompy creature decks because of the fact that you're now having a new one. You have something that can block flyers because green is notoriously bad at it. Second, you have now power 4, greater trample, and haste. So now if I, let's say, have some form of a dragon, or I have some form of if I have Anzrak out on the field, now I get double the amount of, I get the 2 attacks because of the additional attack phase, plus now he gains trample and haste as soon as he comes out. So this is more of like you want this on the battlefield to build up for a bigger and better combination.
Yeah, I guess it does just get better as I keep talking about it. Yeah. So I'll give it a slay.
All right, slay it is. What do we have next, Tom?
I don't know. What do we have next? We have Satoru, the Infiltrator. Menace. When Satoru, the Infiltrator, and or one or more non-token creatures enter the battlefield under your control, if none of them were cast or no mana was spent to cast them, draw a card. So, plot spells. Huge in this for Satoru. Also, ninjutsu as well, because you're not casting them. It's just a ninjutsu. And so with that ninjutsu effect, you're also going to be able to draw cards. The one thing that I do like is that there's no stopping on the number of, cards coming into the battlefield, or creatures that are coming into the battlefield, that, are, it's not limiting on your draw effects, right? Where it has that text, this ability only triggers once. So reanimation, right? Bringing things from the graveyard to the battlefield. Blink, right? Returning it from exiling and returning it to the battlefield. There's just too many synergies that can go with this, and you're gaining card draw out of it. I really do think this card's good, and it's only 2 mana.
No, that's really good. Slay.
Yeah, it's a slay.
Alright, we've got Annie joins up. It is 1 and then Naya. Legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Then its ability below that is if a triggered ability of a legendary creature you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Any type of legendary deck that includes the Naya colors, we're thinking Joda for starters, both Jodas, to be honest, and that is going to be the whole key to it. If it's not going to be a legendary centric deck, this card is not really going to be playing nearly the same type of effect that it would be. So I'm going to give it a nay because it's not as versatile, but if you are making anything that's a legendary deck, then yes, this should go in there and it has those colors. You?
Shoot, man. We can pop off with this card. Legendary matters. There's a lot of decks that, that can go well with this. But, that's the first one. Joda, Unifier, all your legendary creatures card get to have an extra triggered ability. That's disgusting. Just that the ability triggers an additional time. It's just so good. And then if you focus like your Joda the Unifier deck to be not only legendary, but like let's say humans, you throw a roaming throne out there also on top of it. Now you're pretty much going to doubling the double of those effects. So it's just nonsense to me. And just the fact that you're also dealing 5 damage with it entering the battlefield, you're getting multiple things out of this card, and it's disgusting.
So Slay for you.
Absolute slay. I mean, shoot, it's in the commander format. Whatever your commander is, that's a legendary creature. You're going to be doubling its triggers off the rip.
Yeah. But it's got to be in Naya. So Slay it is for you, Nay it is for me. We've got Campbell, Profiteering Mayor. 1 generic, Orzhov. Human Advisor, it's a 2/4. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tap token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is nasty. Because if you have anybody in the pod that is an aristocrat deck or any type of token generating deck, they are going to hate you from the get-go. Plus, you're going to be wanting to buff out put out a lot of tokens yourself, because when you do, each time an opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's like you're wanting to get rid of this as soon as it hits the battlefield. How about you? What do you think?
Pair this with Oger, Anointed Procession, or Oger Talk to be exact, tripling the tokens. And then I think the other big key text word that we, need to pay attention to is that whenever your opponent's, control is for a token that enters the battlefield for them, you're copying it. So having the Oger and Anointed Procession out, you're doubling it. Almost every pod game I'm playing, there's a token that's popping out for, the other players. The other cool thing to also think about is those destroy effects, and they get to create like a 3/3, elephant or whatever, right? Now you're getting that 3/3 elephant as well.
So Slay. What's the last card that we have on our Slay or Nay, Tom?
Oh, this card doesn't get talked about enough, but I think it's so good. Lila, Undefeated Slick Shot. It's the one, and is it legendary creature, human rogue, prowess. Whenever you cast a multicolored instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you exile that spell instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, it becomes plotted. So you get 2 cast triggers on your multicolored instant sorcery effects. Couple things that you can already think that I could personally think of off the bat is, maybe you can run this with Galvanic Iteration, so that way you can cast the Galvanic Iteration for the plotted cost. That way the next turn you can double or copy the next spell that you cast, as you have Galvanic Iteration for free that's being cast, right? The other one that already pops into my head is the Expressive Iteration. That's another good one. And then there's Magma Opus. Is it Opus? No, it's not Opus. It is Magma Opus. Yeah, Magma Opus, that's the card. Being able to cast that and then have that extra cast again for the following turn, that's a big spell that you can now get 2 of. A lot of good synergies as far as, multicolored instant sorceries. But yeah, it's just doubling that effect now for Is It.
Yay, more Is It doublers. All right, and that's going to be it for Slayer Nay. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The more followers we get, the closer we get to being able to afford better equipment. So please like and subscribe. Looking forward to the next set that we're going to be talking about, Oath to the Gatewatch. We just finished and released Eldritch Moon. Looking forward to hearing your comments in the comment section below. As always, my friends, please stay gaslit.
Stay lit, baby.
Absolutely.